Shalom, friends! Welcome to Orange Socks, a podcast celebrating Jewish creativity. I'm your host, Yitzchok Moully, inviting you to join me in exploring the soul of Jewish expression. Hello, Meir.
Hi. Hi.
I'm in Meir Kruter studio, and this is wonderful. Hello. I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
The weather's nice.
It is the beginning of spring, and us artists with our up and downs, we have something to look forward to, huh?
Well, I guess spring kind of represents that, doesn't it?
It definitely does. It does. New beginnings, new opportunities.
Yeah.
So this podcast is titled Orange Socks, and it's about exploring Jewish creativity. Yeah, absolutely. I'm wearing mine. Can you see it? Creativity, expression within the Jewish community. And so I'm going on a journey, and this is definitely one of my stops.
I love it. You know, so the orange socks, I wouldn't necessarily connect that with creativity, but when your subtitle speaks of the Jewish community, I guess that the orange socks is kind of almost rebellious a little bit, and I guess that's the creativity that we are. We're like semi-rebellious within our own community, but we're barely artists.
No, barely artists?
We're barely artists.
I beg to differ. We're counterculture to some degree.
Yeah.
And artists usually are pushing the envelope in some form or other, or questioning in some form or other.
Yeah.
I don't think we're barely artists.
No, it's true. But I do want to know how I would fare outside of our community as an artist.
Right. Well, a big fish in a small pond.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's start at the beginning. When did you first call yourself an artist, and what was your journey to that?
It's funny. I mean, I've been an artist since I'm a kid, and I'll give you that background. But throughout my life and my career, I've called myself different things, and what I've called myself actually affects how I feel and how I act. At times, I've been a photographer. At times, I've been a salesman. And I've been a graphic designer. I actually studied graphic design formally. That's really the only thing I've studied formally. And I remember certain points in my life where I said, I am no longer a graphic designer. I am a photographer. And I established that. And I started telling people that when I introduced myself to people. And that changes things somehow. So these days, because life is a journey, right? I've arrived at this point having traversed all those other points. I just call myself a creative.
Okay.
So,
so you're avoiding the artist title.
I think it includes everything, and I am avoiding the artist title because I think artist refers to primarily to the fine arts, which I am. I mean, this studio.
Is fine.
Yeah, this is fine arts right here for sure. Although this studio, I have a computer behind me, so I do.
Oh, today everyone uses technology in some form.
Right, that's correct. That's true. But I still use it to process my photos. I'm still an active, a practicing photographer, professional photographer. But I actually consider myself more than, I don't want to belittle it as a fine artist, but more than a fine artist. Whereas even as we're setting up for this podcast, I'm proficient with the technology to make a podcast.
Oh, so you just like watch me struggle, huh?
Yeah, I could.
I'm getting there.
I think part of the experience of making the podcast is figuring it out. It's actually funny. I've watched a bunch of podcasts grow over the last year or two as podcasts have become more popular, and I've seen how their audio quality, how when they're doing video podcasts, how all the lighting and stuff has improved as their listenership has grown also.
Right.
So I think that'll happen with you as well.
Well, one great line from I really should Gary V. And I think it's
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. From it was local, but a comment that he said ages ago is that don't wait till you're good enough to produce. Start producing. And one of the many reasons is that people will go along the journey with you, and they'll, I remember when he was just recording in a back of a studio, back of a garage with limited whatever, and I have seen that growth. So as you said about those podcasts, that you've seen the growth, and therefore you feel more connected to some degree to those podcasts and to those creators, because they didn't just show up as this fully polished product that you're not having, but they to some degree came along the journey with you.
It's so true. It's so true. And, what you just mentioned, along with a lot of other knowledge, is stuff that I know of, but I don't actually put into practice myself. And I've fallen into the trap of waiting till things are perfect before I produce things. As a matter of fact, I would say even with the podcast, I've kind of dabbled, but I've wanted to put something out for a long time. And I think one of the advantages you have is that you are considered, if I'm not mistaken, primarily a fine artist. So it's acceptable, well, at least in your mind, it's acceptable to struggle with the technology because that's not your area of expertise.
Right.
And for me, in my mind, and I know this is incorrect, but in my mind, as a professional photographer, I feel like if I put out a product that technically touches on photography, like a video podcast, that
about photography,
about
anything,
anything. So even if I were to just put out a podcast having to do with my artwork,
right, you would want.
I would want it to adhere to a certain level of technical proficiency. And I don't know if that's correct. I think people will accept anything. As a matter of fact, my dream is actually to be a YouTuber. Like simple push it dream is actually just to be a YouTuber. So above all else, like
Can I ask the stupid question, the elephant in the room?
Please.
Why not? What's stopping you?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many variables. This is
group therapy, friends.
Oh, everything that I ever share with the world is group therapy, whether it's paintings or just status on my WhatsApp. It's all therapy for me, and I'm happy to have you all along. And you're welcome to interact as my therapist. You're welcome to respond to my statuses and my stories. But
absolutely, this
is all therapy for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That sounds like a pretty. I mean, the way you said that, that's a deep. It's a visceral. And
I have a lot of passions. Art is a passion of mine. Travel is a passion of mine. Photography is a passion of mine. Graphic design is a passion of mine. I like riding my bike and playing basketball. But
so you could roll those all in, or
right.
Most
so
of those
I would say the umbrella passion, the dream is to be a YouTuber where I'm sharing all of those things. Right. But we're really jumping ahead. I don't know. Do you want me to give my background?
Yeah. Let's hear how did you get to where you are and
I
what
have
you're
no
doing.
idea. It was all Ashkacha Pratis, I guess.
There we go. I like that answer. You and I both, all of us. Really,
it's a lot of it's true. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if where I've gotten to is a successful point.
We're all a work in progress. This is not. This is the point you've gotten here. Yeah. You're on your journey. You're 40 years in the desert. Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you said
literally,
earlier
I feel like it's 40 years in the desert.
That you said that you consider yourself a creative. So from the beginning, from whenever you remembered, like that was just part of your identity?
Absolutely. Even, as a kid, like I was 5 years old and I was creating art. I was drawing. I guess I started off as the fine artist, That was before I had a camera. It was before I had a computer.
Right.
I was drawing, and I was fortunate when I was a little older, I'd say 8 or 9. My mom would know all the details. I started taking art classes with Zelda Weiss. She had a teaching studio in her basement in Brooklyn, and I remember she was hesitant to give classes to boys at first. She thought the boys would be too wild, so all of her classes were for girls. But the truth was contrary to that, where the boys were there because they wanted to do art. The girls maybe just needed something to occupy their time on a Sunday. But boys who were coming after
those who were coming were serious about it.
Yeah, they were serious about it, and we were very serious. I quickly outgrew her lessons, but I continued to attend her classes and to just kind of paint on my own for many years. And that was my first experience with fine art, with working with paints. And I still use the same paints now. I don't know. That's why I don't know if I'm a real fine artist. I use acrylic paints. Okay. Don't real artists use? I know you use spray paint now.
First of all, there's no real and not real artists.
Yeah.
And today, everything.
Actually, this painting behind us of the Rebbe, that was a commission. This is a copy, but it was commissioned by somebody who gave me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted. Okay. They already purchased other art from me before, and they trusted me implicitly, which is amazing. And that was made almost entirely with house paint. You can go to Home Depot and buy samples of house paint for about $5, and I really enjoy using house paint. It's great.
A magnificent piece. Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, it really is. As a Chabad Chassid, and everyone seems to paint the Rebbe or draw the Rebbe, and some people capture and some people don't. And I feel like this, in your unique style, and we'll get to.
Thanks, man.
No, you captured a soul. You definitely captured something there.
Thank you.
And I love that it's, that you make prints that people can, one person has the original, but, to let others to further, so in my own formal art education, I've realized, I distill it down to three things: that all expression, all creativity come down to three basic points. There's what you say, your subject matter, how you say it, your medium, and then what you do with it. So,
meaning where it's exhibited, or
what you do with it. Like, do you just leave it here in the studio? Is it just for you, just to enjoy?
I never considered that.
Will it ever leave the studio? And when it does leave the studio, what you do with it, how you put it out there in the world.
It's interesting.
How you define yourself, you said earlier, right, made a difference. You define yourself as a graphic designer, then you made that shift to artist.
Sure.
So the artwork as
well.
Back
to artist.
Yes, back to artist. So the taking the work out of the studio, beyond the studio, I think is a very integral part of the process. I know for me, I realized that the viewer, inviting the viewer into the process of creating art, to me, there was a shift at some point. And that also led me towards, street art, murals, where it's already on the street. The work is on the street. It's not in the studio and then you take it out, but that it's just you create on the street.
It's made to be seen.
It's made to be seen, exactly. And therefore, the creative process, the what you say and how you say it, is affected by...
What's fascinating, though, about street art is the origin of I don't know, all street art, but graffiti certainly, is that it's actually done... secretly, right? It's done in cloak of night. So,
well, again,
counterculture, and that's fascinating. It's made to be seen, but almost anonymously. I mean, that's, I guess, due to the fact that they were doing it places where they would get in trouble. So they had to do it secretly.
From what I understand, it's about, that the corporate world owns the streets, and it's taking back the streets from those worlds.
Yeah, but your stuff is done publicly. As a matter of fact, it's done. I mean, part of the making of the process is a bit of a show, right?
Well, I try where I can. I try to bring.
So I envy that. I often tell people when I was in 8th grade, one of my best friends had a beautiful voice, and he would sing, and people enjoyed his singing, and at the same time, people enjoyed my artwork as well. I had what to share already back then, and they would rave about my work, but they didn't see the process of it being made. Right. So my artwork was kind of done privately and then shared publicly. And his art, his singing, was done publicly. And I always envied the fact that people were swooning over him as he was creating his artwork. So now, as I paint all these years later, I'm fortunate that we have social media and there's other modes of me sharing my work as I paint it. So I not that I have a camera running live while I'm painting, but I'm sharing it almost within the moment. The same day I'm able to upload, snippets of me making it or talking about it. And that for me is a tremendous part of the process. I don't know if that's stage 3 yet, because that's not when the piece is complete, what you do with the piece. But
that idea of sharing and how you share it impacts the first two, which reminds me of, I suppose, one of my first social media interactive art to some degree was a number of years back. I created what I call abstract Omer. So the Sfirsa Omer is coming up soon, and that there's 7 weeks, 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 times 7, the Sfirot, the 7 times 7 of the Sfirot, and there is a Kabbalah of color. So there are colors associated with each of the 7 levels. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. You can look it up for...
Yeah, you got to verify everything he says.
And so I gave myself a challenge every night of Sfira to make one painting and to use those 2 colors to create an abstract painting based on the thoughts and the ideas of that night. And to me, what was interesting was I would do it, and then I'd take a photo, I'd put my writing, I'd put it on Facebook back, and this is like almost 10 years ago now, probably more than 10 years ago. And I started getting feedback from people. I started getting that response from others. And I got to a point, like one night, it was after midnight, I hadn't posted anything. And a few people was like, "You okay? Where's the painting? I got to go to sleep. I need to see that painting." So even though I was doing it alone in the studio,
that's fantastic.
Across.
Well, first of all, there's accountability, right?
Yes.
Because as artists,
we flake on ourselves.
Yeah, we certainly do. We certainly do.
Yes. but we're here. We're still moving forward. Are we ready to talk about a project that we want to do?
We could jump ahead to that.
I mean, we can just jump all over the place, right?
Of course, yeah. Quantum leap. Go for it.
So this is a beautiful. Well, no, let's talk about your style of art.
Okay, sure.
Let's start with that.
Yeah. My artwork is primarily the subject matter has been Rabbanim.
Oh wait, I'm going to interrupt.
Please.
Is what you say and how you say it, right? You have a very defined style. So how you say it, which one of the two is more important? The what you say, the subject matter, or how you say it using how you say it?
How I say it, yeah.
So that's...
Right now, I think people relate to me as the guy that paints the rabbis, but I think what's recognized, there's a lot of people... So I think it's both of them. I think it's one and two. I think it's that I paint rabbis and that I paint it in my style. My style specifically, see like the structure of how the composition comes together, at least from close up. Far away, it kind of melds more into a more recognizable subject, and that subject being rabbis up until now. But within this structure, this grid structure, there's letters. I don't know if you can see from there, but you could look it up, that my paintings all have letters in them. And those letters are actually, they're usually legible text, the text that has something to teach us about the subject matter. So in this case, this is a portrait of the Rebbe, and this is made of the Kibbel HaYehudim, right? That's, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So that's
the Rebbe's Mimer.
That's the Rebbe's Mimer. I believe that was not his first mimer, which was but mimer on Purim. Right. It's the mimer from his first Purim that he was Rebbe. That he was a Rebbe, and so that's a bit of his Torah that he's sharing. I've also painted him with Basi Lagani, and I painted him actually with Tanya, which was not written by him, but it's still quintessential to teach us 100%. About who he is. So all of my paintings are like that. Behind me over here, I have a painting of Rav Breuer. Yakis will know who that is, and it's also made out of his Torah. So, but it doesn't have to be a portrait of a person. It could be a scene of Yerushalayim, and it could just be something. It could be the Kotel, and using in this style, I think. In this grid style. So yeah, that's where I'd like to venture out. I would like to maintain the construction, the process of using a grid and putting the text in there. But my subject matter, I want it to change. So,
so you're pushing your own.
I'm definitely looking to push the boundaries soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Even the structure, like even this one was made with the grid is less visible than some of my earlier work, where like the pixels were very noticeable. But I think this is my thing. I think the letters and the sort of structured look is my thing. Although I do want to go more street. I want to just throw paint the way you do. I want to get messy. You're dressed nicely today, but usually you're a little messier, and I love that. I think it's fantastic. Right. Yeah, you should apologize. You know what? Come on.
Yes.
Be yourself.
This is the other me. This is sometimes
So there's another you, right? Because there's lots of me's too.
There's many me's. Absolutely. Yeah. I live. There's a comedian that talks about the difference in men and women, and he talks about men being very compartmentalized. And I really find that like, okay, now I'm in this mode, now I'm in this mode. Even as you said, when you changed from a graphic designer to a photographer, I'm still going back to that. Yeah. There was a shift. For sure. So there was both of you, and then you decided, okay, I'm jumping all the way into photographer full time. Yeah. Listen, I'm a rabbi, a father, an artist.
I very much believe in like school uniforms or dress codes, stuff like that. I feel like how you dress and how you act and how you portray yourself and your title definitely affects how you act. So yes, I appreciate that you dressed up for this podcast, for this conversation. Yeah.
Well, I got my orange socks, so that's all that is. Yeah. It's about a little bit of personality
with the polka dots on them.
With the polka dots.
Yeah.
Well, this one doesn't have. This has got stripes. Oh. You gotta mix it up. You always gotta have.
See, that's your thing, by the way.
You got color.
That's cool.
If you only get a little bit of color, you gotta maximize your impact. So, how did you arrive at this process? What would you say your long arc of your creative process?
That's a great question. I first started with this process about 24 years ago. I was in college and I was studying graphic design, and I had a project due for a mandatory arts class where we were like painting. We had to paint. I think we were using gouache, which is like a watercolor type based paint, and it was a class called Color Theory.
Okay.
And we had to somehow make a painting that utilized how color affects composition and mood and whatnot. So I decided to take a picture of a friend of mine and represent it with pixels. I was kind of like melding my graphic design major or minor as it is with this assignment, and I chose to do pixels. So it was just a picture of a person, a portrait just like this, right. Done with boxes, simple boxes. They were just perfectly square boxes. There was nothing else in each pixel. It was right. Just flat color. So that's why I went about that, and shortly after doing that, I kind of was thinking about how I could adapt it. And I also discovered an artist named Chuck Close who kind of uses very similar technique. And I wanted to add more details into each pixel to get more resolution.
Right, right.
So I decided to start adding letters in there, Hebrew letters, just to give it a kedusha, more resolution, something more interesting to look at, and also to teach us about the subject, which is core to my artwork. So that's why I went that direction. I will also note that I can't necessarily, maybe on a good day I could sit down and draw you perfectly, like I could draw your likeness, but not necessarily. And I, like many other artists, cheat using different techniques. I use a grid to make sure that all the proportions are correct. Right. It said that even Michelangelo used some sort of projector or grid technique.
I don't believe it's cheating. It's cheating and not cheating. There's a pure way to do it. I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the letters and the Hebrew letters and giving meaning. How does your Judaism impact your work? How does your work impact your Judaism?
Yeah.
Your Judaic origin story, where you showed up Judaically.
Well, I've been religious. I was raised religious from birth, and it's always been a part of me. But I'm not as knowledgeable as I would like to be. I envy your rabbinic knowledge, and I kind of felt obligated to learn more about my subjects. So this process of putting the Torah within my paintings is not only to teach you, it's to teach me. A big part of my life is the exploration of things, it's my curiosity about the world. And I want to share that process of questioning and discovering with everyone. That's really the foundation of like what I do in all of my creative endeavors. So before I paint a piece, I will learn about the subject, usually using that bit of Torah that's included. So
Right.
I wasn't familiar with this bit of Torah, but I learned it with someone in preparation for the painting. Right. And that definitely affects me both ways. It affects me now that I'm doing it this way, it affects me as a person. And my children. I mean, my house is filled with these paintings. Yeah. So they're raised with Rabbanim watching over us as we're having our Shabbos Seudah, and it's a beautiful thing. And where I'm possibly lacking in my ability to give over to my children, I'm using my artwork to help teach them, to give them a foundation for who we're supposed to be, who we're supposed to emulate. And
creating a Jewish environment.
Creating a healthy Jewish environment, yeah.
Right. I found that very interesting. I interviewed Marco Dashev recently, an incredible photographer and portrait photographer.
Yeah.
And with a live subject, there's a certain amount of getting to know the subject.
Sure.
Even though he says, in one sitting you can't know the subject, but there's a connection between
right.
The subject and the photographer. But you're painting, your subjects are not. You're not having a conversation with the subjects.
What are you suggesting?
And then yet, but it's to you, it's not just okay. This is a face. This is a person. Okay, let me just get to the technical side. But it's what you say, not just how you say it. Again, it's what you say is connected to you, that you want to understand them and their Torah and their learning before you can dive into. Even though you're working off a reference photo, so to speak, which I love that
Yeah, I'm not just making pretty pictures. I'm trying to create this I guess a bridge between who the person was, their life, and us currently, and I want to make this relationship between us and the subject in my paintings real, tangible. So that's what I'm doing. It's really I'm using artwork to make it the sugar of the medicine, to make it easier to go down. sometimes we don't want to learn the Torah. We don't care about the person. We just want something. We just want. It's too academic. So I'm using the artwork to make that academic more appealing, I guess, to people.
Right.
But to inspire them to learn more about whatever it is that what we're trying to do.
So you're talking about like an individual and their Torah, their teachings, their learnings, not necessarily Judaism as an experience.
That too, but
I
no.
love Judaism. I mean, I'm all in.
Well, I would like to.
It excites me and gets me excited. And learning Torah, I'm not very good at it. I mean, a little more AD. I'm a little more. I mean, I'm an auditory processing person, so I listen a lot more than I sit in front of an open book. But separating Torah learning from Jewish life, as you described, but that this for your children, that they're surrounded by holy men, they're surrounded by Hebrew letters, they're surrounded by in your home, is beautiful.
It's funny that bridge that I was talking about before, it puts me on that bridge. So my kids don't look at me as being such one of the more chashuv people necessarily with relative to other people that might have longer beards or a beard. But when the people with the long beards relate to my artwork and they feel the connection to something that they value, that puts me in the conversation with the current people and with these past people. And so it kind of, hopefully it elevates me as well in the eyes of my children. So that hopefully they don't just think I'm a good artist, but they feel like that I have some importance within this long history and culture. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to push back on one thought. Is that
please?
No, that you're not a chashuv person, which to translate is not an important person. I came from humble beginnings, if I may, and maybe one day I'll share my story. But I was like a nobody, and very comfortable with that. Like, that. But I'm me. Like, I'm not meant to be someone else. I'm not relative to that. I'm me. I'm doing my thing. And thank God, Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, that I ended up in my creative journey at all. But I don't know. I find it healthy from a Judaic perspective. I don't need to compare myself to anyone. And there's the famous story of Reb Zusha, a Hasidic master, that on his deathbed at the end of a very wonderful life serving God, he said, I'm not worried why they're not going to judge me like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, and so on. But I'm worried. Was I the best Zusha that I can be?
Sure.
But
I have very high expectations of myself. So I know that we can't waste our time comparing ourselves to other people. We have to live up to our own potential. But I feel that my potential is at least as high as many other people's. So I just have high standards, and I get lost. I get lost in where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, and all the opportunities that I've missed. So it's
that I can completely, that resonates with me deeply.
Yeah.
I have very high standards. I have some big ideas, some big, and they become big budget ideas. It's not like I can conceive them, I can make renderings, I can put it out there, but a $5-10 million project of Mount Menorah in Jerusalem taking over a whole hill, like that's to some degree beyond me. But I'm striving for that. But
do you feel this is like a downward spiral of some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like we say we're not, we harp on ourselves, we were down on ourselves that we're not successful enough, we're not reaching our high standards, and then we wallow in that so much that we just then by the time we snap out of it, we're like, oh man, we just missed that period of time where we could have actually been working towards it. I feel like more successful people just get up, they don't think about what mistakes happened yesterday. They just worry about today and they move forward. And as artists, we get so hung up in this. We have thin skins and we're so emotional. And it's like, stop being such an artist and make your art. It's like the irony is that just be an artist, but don't be too much of an artist. Make your art without feeling it too much, but make art that feels. It's impossible almost.
Well, to me, my identity as an artist and a rabbi and the confluence of both, I believe God put me in this world to
Can you feel the struggle, by the way? Can you feel the struggle? I hope you feel it. Like it's deep.
No, but
it's deep.
It's that I'm here to create art. So I got to create art. I had a bad day yesterday. All right, you pick yourself up, you give yourself a week, give whatever it is. I've done projects that are epic and the world didn't care. Nobody, people didn't respond. And that really hurts. Yeah, it's the worst. But
and then you make something that you don't feel too proud of.
And then everyone loves it.
Oh, they love it.
But what my motivation to keep going isn't just about me and my art. It's like, it's a calling. It's a responsibility.
Oh, beautiful.
You know, I in my speech that I give, what's a good Jewish rabbi doing painting? I like one of my things. I end off with, we have an opportunity and a responsibility.
I love the responsibility aspect of it. I really wouldn't have put that into words. There were a few years ago, I had exhibited some work along with yourself, I think, in Miami during Art Week. And I ended up selling a piece to somebody. Actually, they didn't buy a piece that was on exhibit. They wanted a bigger version of a piece that was on exhibit, which was beautiful. Of course, it was a great sale. But the really meaningful, and it was a great sale. Financially, it was terrific. But my wife and I brought the piece to them personally, like a year later. Like I had to make the piece. It was a picture of the Rebbe. And they didn't have any other Jewish artwork in their home.
Right.
They kind of kept Shabbos, I think, but they weren't Shomer Shabbos. They weren't overly religious people. But something about the Rebbe spoke to them, whatever cursory knowledge that they had, they knew of, and bringing it to them. And I actually spent time to hang it on their wall, like before I left. Full service, white glove service. It was so meaningful. I felt like a shliach, actually. Like I was doing the Rebbe's work. I was doing God's work. It was beautiful, and that was something that I took upon myself as fulfilling this responsibility. It was beautiful because I wasn't just an artist making pretty picture to match someone's furniture.
Right.
You know.
Right.
I think it did match their furniture quite nicely, actually.
It's a win-win.
But it was a magical experience for me, and that's something that I try and recreate every day when I paint. Okay. And when I share.
All right, so yeah, we beat ourselves up. That's for sure.
Yeah, we do. The artistic struggle is real. Like it's a cliche, but it's a real thing.
But again, to go to Chassidus, to go to Tanya, and what Tanya says is, Tanya is really the book of Sefer Shel Beinanim, the book of a Beinani. Now, to be a Beinani, according to Tanya, is pretty much a tzaddik in our world. It's perfect thought, speech, and action. That you have perfect thought, perfect speech, perfect action, always Torah mitzvahs, and never deviating from that, and yet having a desire for other. A tzaddik doesn't have a desire. A Beinani has a desire and fights the good fight. And for me, who's definitely not a Beinani al pi Tanya, I stumble, I fall. But what's the role of the Beinani? They're never going to become a tzaddik. They're never going to cross that threshold and get rid of that desire. It's about fighting the good fight every day. You just gotta, like, my analogy is, you're keeping the monsters. Your door, you're holding the door. Yeah. There's no lock. There's no latch that, like, you can just let go. Anytime you let go, they come in. But tomorrow morning you start again, and you just pushing up against that door, holding out, doing the best you can.
Yeah. And
we fail. We do fail, but that's okay. Fail is that's part of.
Yeah, but once you fail and you let a monster in, the monster, it's not one less monster pushing against the door, so it's easier. It's actually that monster is now helping the other monsters, and you're pushing the door closed, and that monster is actually on the same side as you pulling the door open.
Right. No,
so it gets harder.
It's not a perfect.
You let one in, and the battle is. Whew.
But God, again, we're getting to Chassidus here, but another one of my lines that I always remember: God hardwired us to fail. So what's the definition of fail? No, God hardwired us not to be perfect. The angels are perfect, but he doesn't get satisfaction. God gets satisfaction from our effort, and the greater the struggle, the greater the satisfaction.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So,
although I wouldn't mind some satisfaction without some struggle. It would be nice to jump a little bit.
Look here,
Speaking of Tanya, speaking of my artwork, I believe the Tanya opens. I'm not a Bucky, but there's book 1, there's book 2, and I think book 2 used to be book 1. Something was reversed at one point. I don't know. And Tanya that I've learned towards the beginning talks about the world is created with the letters of the Torah.
Yes.
Right. And if you're really holding at a high level, you could be like you're like in the Matrix, and you can actually see the letters kind of forming, and you can look around. I can see a person made out of letters, and I can see the chairs made out of letters, and there is no spoon. So that's my paintings. That's my paintings. You're able to see. I want you to see this person is not just, again, he's a person, he's a face. He was a good-looking guy. He has a good stare, but like,
Rebbe, so.
but the reason we hold to the Rebbe is not because like he was like such a handsome guy and he was like, he was good in magazines with like a bottle of perfume, or because he could model a watch nicely. Absolutely. It's because of his Torah. That's why we hold of him, because of his Torah. So my paintings allow you to see into the matrix. So when you look at this portrait of this person, you're able to see what he's made of. You're able to see the Torah that created and sustains the world.
So that's another 2 points for what you say as opposed to how you say it. No, you found it's really what seems to be a perfect equilibrium between what you say and how you say it. That you're committed to this grid system.
I've explored other things. Truth is, I have so many other. That's why I actually, in the past, I've explored other ways of going about my fine art, about the painting specifically, and this is I'm set on this for now, for sure. Yeah, no, I want to be more straight. It could be more loose or more whatever. It could be with a pencil or on an iPad, or it could be with like house paint. But it's probably going to have some sort of structure to it with the letters in it. Fine, and the letters could be English. I actually just finished a piece last week of a different Rebbe, the Tasha Rebbe, and it was done using English. It was a translation of a letter, of a body of text, and so it was done with English. And it was actually a little challenge because I hadn't done English before. I've done Russian actually. Someone's great grandfather was Russian, and I painted him. He was Streimel and everything, but it was done in Russian. Very cool. But I lost my train of thought. No, but I wanted to finish that thought, whatever that thought was. Yeah, but there's other things I want to do. There's like other collages or other graphic design type projects. And so they don't qualify as my fine art, my paintings, but I still want to find a way. I don't know if like they would even go within the same portfolio, or I have a pseudonym or something where like that would, but I need to do that also. I need to get it out.
Yeah.
I need to get it out. No. Some monsters are good to come out. There's like good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, right? Some of the monsters need to be let out.
Maybe they're not monsters.
Maybe they're not monsters, right? By the way, that's true too. Maybe we're not monsters. Maybe us nonconformists with our own little shtetl are not such bad people after all. I know.
I disagree with that premise. I disagree with that premise.
But there is definitely a basic underlying premise. At least there has been until, let's say, 2020. That like the artist is the rebel. The artist is like whatever, don't be an artist. You should learn full time. If you're not going to learn full time, be a doctor. If you're not going to be a doctor, be an accountant. If you're not going to be an accountant, be anything, but don't be an artist. Don't be an artist. Maybe because we're afraid the artist can go off the derech because there's so many monsters that are present behind the door.
Their religiosity.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, to that is that the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Chabad Rebbe, wrote a letter to an artist saying that in years gone by, there was this distance between art and Judaism, and now we can and we should use our art. That division has gone. That division is no longer there, and therefore we can and should use our creativity in the service of God.
That division disappeared at a specific point in time?
I think it's part of like the old world moving to the new world. If it's the First World War, the Second World War.
That's fascinating. I've definitely noticed, even in my short life, I've noticed that things change. Like I could feel the wind of change, right? So this is what we're speaking of. That old thought of like the artist versus like now there's just this one body of creativity that's actually taken over. It has literally taken over the world. Actually, with social media, with even this sharing this conversation here, there's something current about it that didn't exist. Not that there weren't conversations before and there weren't videos of people sitting down in interviews, but there's something current about this process, and I feel like this process, the way the world works now, has affected our art. The way we go about
well,
it.
Again, that's the third element: how you share it with the world and how that impacts those first two.
So tell me about it, because I've never really thought about the third element. The first two, of course, but this third one, like, what does that mean? The only thing I can relate to is when I was a kid, when I was in the Brooklyn basement making these paintings in Zelda's class. If I didn't have a kavanah that I was going to be making it for someone, I had to keep it. If one of my cousins, my grandmother, wanted that painting, I said, "Sorry, Bubby, I didn't make that with like I didn't know I was making this for someone, so I have to hold on to it." It's still in a box back there somewhere.
Right.
Literally, it's in this garage right there in a box. Some painting that I made when I was 9 years old.
Right.
But I had to make it with the kavanah I was going somewhere. Actually, ironically, life is mida connected mida. Now I make artwork with the intention of getting rid of it, and my studio is filled with inventory. My house is filled with inventory, which we're enjoying, but I wouldn't mind if it was in your home instead of mine.
If you don't mind using English words, you're throwing in a lot of Hebrew, but lingo, but we got a broad audience out there. So
yeah, well, my kavana, my intention when making a painting had to be pure in the fact that, like, was I making it for someone else or was I making it for myself? That was something that was necessary.
So, Simon Sinek says there are 3 elements to being an artist. I forget the first 2, but the third is that you share the work with, there is an other, that you share it with other. Otherwise, you're a craftsperson and it's about your own enjoyment. But there's something about creating art to share with other. But I have a feeling I'm running out of battery on my laptop. So we got to get to 2 things.
Okay.
Our project together.
Sure.
I think we've set the stage enough. I had an idea for a portrait of the Rebbe.
What a novel idea.
A novel idea, that's right. And yet, I couldn't just, I had to do something different. It had to be conceptually different. It just had to be different. And my son, my second son, is born on Gimel Tamuz, which is the day of the Rebbe's passing. And actually, I had the idea a long time ago. You can tell because I was working with my son to create this in time for his bar mitzvah, and now he's 18. So it's been a while. But the concept is that we're talking about the physical world and the spiritual world and the interplay between the two.
Right.
So a dollar bill is the ultimate piece of physicality. It's the ultimate, the buck stops here. It's about the, the greenbacks. The dollar bill is, if there's a symbol of materialism,
yeah.
it's a dollar bill.
Because it can be used to trade for anything, right?
Right. Yeah. And yet, what did the Rebbe do? The Rebbe stood for hours on Sundays giving people dollar bills, inspiring them, telling them this is for charity. And of course, the dollar bill that the Rebbe gave you, you don't give away. You hang on to.
Right.
And so you gave $1 or $2 or $3 to charity in lieu of this one. You trade it off. And this is your Rebbe dollar. So the Rebbe took something physical and turned it into something spiritual. Mm-hmm. So the concept for this piece, and I couldn't get it done with my son because I'm very much about what you say. My how you say it is so all over the place. I need your help. So now we are collaborating.
Yeah.
And this piece is made up of a grid.
Which was your idea,
right?
Originally,
is so the dollar bills, taking dollar bills, cutting them down into, I think, 1/2-inch squares,
right?
And then taking the Rebbe's Torah. And I spoke to rabbis about this. We got a green light, but taking the Rebbe's Torah, also cutting it down to 1/2-inch squares, and creating the black and white, the 2-tone of the combination of the dollar bills and the Torah. And in my mind, it's using the physical world to reach the spiritual, and using the spiritual world, taking the spiritual world and bringing it to the physical world, bringing God into this world. So these 2 elements together. And I've been nudging you for how long now?
2 years or 3 years?
Okay.
I think 2 years.
This is on record.
Oh boy.
Please God for this Gimel Tamuz, which is 30 years. That's the 30th anniversary.
Wow.
So this is big.
Wow.
And we're going to work together to make this, to bring it to life.
All right.
So we're going to make this happen.
So you're the artist and I'm the craftsman.
We're co-collaborating. I'm sure you're going to bring your own flair and your own individuality to the process. And
Meir Kruter.
Meir Kruter, exactly.
Meir Kruter collab.
And just in case we run out of time or run out of battery, the way I try to end these podcasts is with a question: how would you help? What advice do you have for young orange socks wearers, for young creatives in the Jewish community, for them to find their voice, for them to find their individuality, for them to go on their journey, in 2024, begin their journey in that Judaic, the world of Jewish art and being Jewish and being an artist and creating. So there you go. That's a nice long question for you.
Wow. Oh, wow. I want to be profound since you're giving me one question in very little time and we're leaving with this. But I would say the first thing you should do is shut off everything else. Don't listen to anything else. Shut off everything. Put your phone away. Go in the world. It doesn't have to be the forest. It could be the city. It could be anywhere. And make something. Make whatever your body tells you to make. Just make something. Do that. Make a lot of that. It might be horrible, but make it and just tweak it and keep making it without any other input at all. Then I would open myself up to the world and I would see the beauty, and I would go to museums. Don't look just online. Don't just look at Instagram or Pinterest. Go to museums, look around, look at billboards, look everywhere. Look at all the beauty in the world. Look at God's creations, look at the flowers, how they bloom and how beautiful the colors are, and incorporate that into your work. And learn how other people made stuff. Learn the rules, and then using your own intuition along with all the knowledge you've learned. Now that you've learned the rules, learn how to break them and make something beautiful that can communicate the ideas that you are responsible for sharing with the rest of the world. Because we each have our own responsibility to serve God in our own way.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I love that. Well, Meir, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was mine.
And
by the way, we're in my studio using my audio gear.
Yeah.
Some of my video stuff.
This is a collaboration.
I don't know. Is this your podcast or mine?
Meir, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
We didn't talk about story code. You want to talk about story code?
Yeah, we'll save that for part 2.
We'll save that for part 2. All right. Thank you.
היום נעשה משהו בלתי נשכח